Russia panics as lone MiG-29, evades every missile and obliterates $155 million depot, a sequence in which a single MiG-29 pilot was hunted by one of the densest air defense networks Russia could assemble. Long-range S-400 systems, Buk M3 launchers, and Su-35S interceptor and low-level guns were all committed to destroying one aircraft before it could strike a fortified ammunition depot supplying the front. Yet by the end of the mission, Russia had lost more than $155 million in missiles and ammunition stockpiles, while the MiG and its pilot returned home. Now it is time to watch how the operation began, from the first moment of contact. At 9:56 a.m., the Ukrainian MiG-29 climbed through 1,000 feet toward Orikhiv, following a corridor it had used many times. The route offered predictable terrain masking and had supported repeated strike sorties throughout the war. On this mission, the aircraft carried two GBU-39 precision-guided bombs intended for a Russian ammunition depot, feeding artillery and Grad rocket units across the sector. Inside the cockpit, the flight felt routine. All engine parameters were normal, navigation was stable, and 12 minutes of flight had passed without incident. What the pilot could not see was the S-400 battery near Melitopol that had already detected him at 120 kilometers and was preparing a firing solution. The first clue arrived as a steady tone in his headset. The gravestone radar had shifted from search mode to a narrow tracking beam. Within seconds, a 48N6 interceptor launched from its tube, its booster accelerating the missile past Mach 2 almost immediately. At this range, the pilot had roughly 80 to 90 seconds before impact. He yanked the stick right, dispensed chaff, and placed the MiG at a 90-degree angle to the radar beam, a notching maneuver designed to nullify Doppler velocity. For 8 seconds, he held the perpendicular course, releasing chaff at programmed intervals. The drifting aluminum cloud produced thousands of false returns. To the S-400's Doppler processor, which sought targets moving toward or away from the radar, the fighter suddenly resembled terrain clutter. Track quality degraded from solid to intermittent to lost. Without guidance updates, the 48N6 defaulted to its backup trajectory and flew toward the last predicted intercept point. But the MiG had already changed course and dropped altitude. In the terminal phase, the missile searched through chaff, found no solid target, and detonated on proximity fuse, scattering fragments through empty air. The pilot understood why the maneuver worked. By denying the radar any measurable closure rate, he had blurred into ground clutter. But the escape was temporary. The gravestone radar's electronically steered array kept a memory of all previous track data and could rapidly infer likely escape paths, especially along routes Ukrainian pilots traditionally used. Russian operators quickly adapted and switched the system into bistatic mode. The transmitter remained at the S-400 site, but the receiver sat 40 kilometers away at a different angle. The MiG's warning systems detected only the transmitter, not the receiver. At 500 feet, he expected terrain masking to protect him, but in bistatic geometry, the radar reflection bounced from his airframe into the offset receiver, like light striking a mirror across a room. The return was faint, but sufficient. The S-400 reacquired him. This time, they did not immediately launch another long-range missile. Instead, the refined track was sent to a Buk M3 battery, stationed to the east. At 10:03 a.m., Buk crews received a complete flight profile, altitude, speed, heading, and a predictive timeline showing where the MiG would appear in roughly 90 seconds. The system calculated he would pass a ridge overlooking a valley, a corridor Ukrainian pilots used often for terrain cover. That predictability now turned into a vulnerability. The Buk team activated the 9S-36M radar, which went from cold to emitting in under 3 seconds, its phased array snapping instantly to the MiG's expected position. This was not a search. It was a pre-planned ambush. In the cockpit, warning lights surged as the Buk achieved lock. Ridgelines boxed him in, leaving little room to maneuver. Diving risked terrain impact. Climbing exposed him to the entire Russian air defense grid. Two 9M317M missiles launched nearly simultaneously. Each weighed around 690 kilograms and could pull 35 Gs in terminal flight. Intercept time 31 seconds. Because the missiles relied on command guidance until the final segment, breaking lock alone would not save him. He chose energy. Throttles forward, stick pulled tight, he initiated a maximum performance climb. The MiG groaned under 7.5 Gs. His G-suit squeezed his legs and abdomen to maintain consciousness as grey vision crept in. The altimeter rose sharply, 2,000 feet, 3,000, 4,000. At 4,500 feet, he dumped his remaining chaff, rolled inverted, and pulled into a defensive barrel roll. The first missile failed to match the roll rate and passed 100 meters below. The second predicted where he would exit the roll, but he applied negative G halfway through, bunting the aircraft downward in the opposite direction. That missile arrived 200 meters off target and detonated harmlessly. The escape cost dearly. The climb and afterburner use burned 300 kilograms of fuel in 40 seconds, and airspeed dropped to 180 knots. On the ground, the Buk crew moved with rehearsed precision, bringing up a fresh missile via transport crane. As the MiG began climbing again toward 15,000 feet, the necessary altitude for optimal GBU-39 glide, the Buk fired another pair of 9 M317M missiles. This time the crew erred. Both missiles launched simultaneously. Instead of two staggered threats, they created one combined engagement. The pilot held a steady line long enough for the GBU-39S to acquire GPS data, requiring about 12 seconds. At 14 seconds, with missiles approaching at nearly Mach 4, he released both bombs. Their wings deployed cleanly. Immediately, he rolled inverted and executed a steep, high-G dive. In this maneuvering regime, physics favored the MiG. Hypersonic missiles required nearly 2 kilometers to reverse direction. The MiG could flip course in roughly 200 meters. Both missiles overshot and detonated in empty sky. At 8,000 feet, he checked fuel. 1,850 kilograms, enough to reach Ukrainian airspace if he avoided further afterburner use and evaded new threats. But a new emitter appeared, and Su-35S closing from about 85 kilometers. The fighter had been vectored by the same network that coordinated earlier engagements. Using its Irbis-E radar, the Su-35S tracked the MiG as a slow-moving contact at 270 knots. At 55 kilometers, the Russian launched an R-77 missile. It ignited and accelerated past Mach 4, closing rapidly with a 47-second impact timeline. The MiG pilot waited, delaying any maneuver until the missile entered its critical approach phase. Then, he executed a maneuver only expert pilots attempt in combat. He pitched the nose upward, 30 degrees, 40 degrees, 50 degrees, 60 degrees, bleeding his airspeed to 180 knots. Near vertical, he applied full rudder, rotating the nose past vertical. Forward motion nearly stopped. The R-77's intercept logic, designed for targets with forward velocity, could not compute a solution. By the time it defaulted to the last known position, the MiG had dropped through that point. The missile overshot by around 300 meters. The aircraft tumbled before he recovered at 5,000 feet and dove again to regain speed. But the Su-35S remained in control of the engagement. It climbed to 20,000 feet, rolled inverted, and dived with an R-73 infrared missile. The MiG received no radar warning. The R-73 homed passively on heat. The seeker locked onto the engine exhaust. The pilot had one defense left: flares. He raised the nose and released every remaining cartridge. The burning magnesium torches created a wall of heat sources. The missile chose the brightest signature and streaked through the flare pattern, missing by roughly 50 meters. The Su-35S pulled out of its dive, but now faced its own fuel constraints. Within minutes, fuel constraints would force the Russian pilot to disengage. The MiG pressed on toward Ukrainian lines, but low-level defenses remained. At 10:14 a.m., flying only 50 feet above farmland, he flew into the sights of a ZSU-23-4 Shilka hidden in a tree line. Its 4 23mm guns fired at a combined 3,400 rounds per minute. At his speed, he would cross the firing path in 2 seconds. Instinctively, he rolled inverted and flew negative G a few meters above the ground. The Shilka's radar struggled to distinguish the inverted fighter from terrain. Even so, rounds struck the aircraft, 3 in the vertical stabilizer, 2 in the right wing. Hydraulics drained, warning lights filled the cockpit, controls degraded into manual reversion, making the stick feel like it was grinding through concrete. But the aircraft remained controllable. He checked his gauges. Fuel at 90 kilograms with 35 kilometers remaining. Engine temperature rising into the red, oil pressure falling. He needed roughly 30 more seconds in the air to reach safety. At 10:15 a.m., the first GBU-39 struck the Russian battalion command post. It had flown 6 minutes through GPS jamming, relying on inertial navigation and preset waypoints. In the final seconds, its infrared seeker identified the building's heat signature and corrected course. It punched through the roof and detonated inside, destroying the operations center, coordinating around 2,000 troops. Seconds later, the second GBU-39 hit the ammunition bunker, the mission's primary target. The structure held roughly 500 tons of 152mm shells, Grad rockets, and mortar rounds in a confined space. The bomb's penetrator broke through reinforced concrete before detonating. The blast ignited the ammunition stack. Each 152mm shell contained around 8 kilograms of explosive, each Grad rocket around 20. One detonation triggered the next in an accelerating chain reaction. The concrete roof held for a brief moment before failing. Analysts estimated the destroyed ammunition represented more than $60 million in material losses. Combined with the long-range 48 N6 missiles, multiple 9M 317M interceptors, and air-launched R-77 and R-73 missiles expended during the chase, valued at roughly $95 million, the total cost exceeded $155 million in a single failed attempt to stop one MiG-29. At 10:17 a.m., the MiG crossed into Ukrainian airspace. Nearly every warning light was illuminated. The engine was operating beyond temperature limits. Hydraulics were almost gone. Flight controls lagged, but still responded. Through haze, he saw the forward landing strip 3 kilometers ahead. No time for a proper pattern. He used the emergency pneumatic system to lower the gear. 2 solid clunks indicated the main gear locked. The nose gear did not respond at first. Approaching at 180 knots, he kept the nose high, letting the main wheels touch first. The aircraft bounced once, then settled. As the speed dropped, the nose gear finally locked just before the nose would have struck the runway. The engines flamed out as he taxied, turbines grinding as they spun down. The MiG rolled to a stop 50 meters from the hangar, trailing smoke and hydraulic fluid, riddled with holes but intact. The mission ended with the pilot alive, the aircraft recoverable, and the ammunition depot destroyed. Russia had spent advanced interceptor missiles, Buk and fighter munitions, and lost a critical ammunition stockpile, together valued at more than $155 million. The strategic question remains: how many such high-cost, low-return engagements can Russia sustain before cumulative losses force changes in its air defense posture across the front? Share your thoughts in the comments section below.